What up y'all, it's T-Tur, and today we're continuing looking at X and Y's scrapped original story. Hopefully we can finish it this part. Let's go. So last time we covered the alleged origin to ride Pokemon, as well as a scrapped feature that Gamefreak wanted to implement involving you messing around with the tilt of your devices, not just in the 3DS but in older consoles, maybe going back to even the Game Boy Color. To make an addendum on this, we were joking with ideas for the DS era, but since it's an actual physical component you'd have to have in the cart, it actually makes sense this was for those second gen games. And I suppose you could attribute it to something like the sister version Pokemon Crystal, since that would be a special version that you'd probably have to pay a bit more for. So if people wanted to, they could just buy the gold and silver versions. And so along with the animated sprites and all, they could incorporate this feature where you could do something when you tilt your Game Boy. Again, this alleged leaker, he says the right things. Let's keep going now. Okay, Sylveon more or less was responsible for the fairy type. What's that supposed to mean, bro? What's Sylveon do? The team wanted a new type to balance out Dragon, but had difficulty deciding on what it'd be and how to represent it. Thus, it was decided to use the idea of an Eeveelution, a simplistic Pokemon that does a good job representing each type it's given, to test out various concepts. Bro, what you talking about, bro? I know what you're talking about. You're saying to visualize the concept of a new type, you decided to use Eevee as the host and use that as a tester for a typing that would actually work in Pokemon. But, bro, look at what you made Sylveon. You gave it all these ribbons and all. You know, when you actually think about the fairy type, you think of stuff relating to mythical creatures like elves. So wings, little elf pointed ears. If you had the idea of fairy first and then try to put that into an Eevee and see what would come out, that would not have looked like Sylveon. That's just my opinion on it. Sylveon looks like a couple tries in to them trying to make a fairy Eeveelution. I do like it though. There were many ideas, but Sylveon and the fairy type ultimately won. Oh, bro. And thus, the ideas on weaknesses and resistances grew from there. Hold up. You telling me they made like 6 unused typing Eeveelutions? A fairy Eevee, a rubber Eevee, crystal Eevee, light Eevee. This is a weird point. I mean, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. There are many ideas, but Sylveon and the fairy type ultimately won, and thus ideas on weaknesses and resistances grew from there. So I get more of what they're saying. So they're saying they already had the idea of making an alien typing, and so they're trying to figure out what that alien typing was gonna be. So fairy was one of them. Ah, bro, your post. Sylveon's original design was a bit more fairy-like though, with actual wings, but these were changed to streamers, the ribbons, when the team realized players might think it'd be a flying type Pokemon. How stupid do you think people are? In a weird way, Sylveon kind of do look like if you just gave it alien type. Right, so those ribbons are a substitute for the wings I was talking about. So I'm poking fun at this, but the more you think about it, there is some process before a new type is made, some trial and error period and all. And honestly, what fairy types were in X and Y, we talked about this earlier, are so unusual. Slurpuff, Aromatisse, it's almost like all the fairies we got derived from them making Sylveon the first fairy type, and kind of missing the point of what fairies are. The only, I mean, it's their game, you know, it turned out fine at the end, but the only actual fairy type that kind of makes sense is the Florges family, and Klefki and Carbink, but only those 3. So because they have such a weird notion for fairy types, it does sound like something like this could be true. Get out of my head, bro. Let's keep going. The original Hawlucha design had more humanoid elements, but was deemed a bit too weird and startling. Oh yeah, don't give the kids anything. No wings, just no Pokemon. As its appearance suggested, it was actually a man dressing as a Pokemon. And was Machamp not terrifying? Machoke is literally a human with freaking plates someone put in its head. So it was redesigned to be more bird-like, and its wrestling outfit integrated into its body. Bro, Girder was just the gen before. Like, that's the whole freaking point of fighting types. So many of them are humanoid. Lucario. Frick, kids don't look. That's a man. Originally, for example, it was clearly wearing a mask over its head instead. Okay, I mean, I get what's going on. Maybe it straight up looked like Kukui, and then you just saw this rubber thing floating over its head. But why does it feel like Gamefreak's suddenly a fan game maker? It was clearly wearing a mask over its head instead of it simply being the pattern of its feathers, and had a belt around its. This one is a joke, right? So I guess to try to help his point here, think of a Machop wearing an obvious mask and running around as a Pokemon. Well, I'm going through the Pokedex after Gen 6 and we don't really get humanoid Pokemon like that. Like, too humanoid. Of course, you get stuff like King Gambit and Annihilate. It does show that they wanted to make a more humanoid Pokemon wrestling themed when you look at the gen right after, right? They made Incineroar, who fits perfectly with Hawlucha in the ring. Honestly, that does sound freaking terrifying. You know what you should have had? You should have had a superhero roaming around with the Hawlucha mask. And he's just going around punching Lysander and running off. I'm so mad. This one, I guess, is believable. Let's keep going. The Goomy line, like Flababy, was also not monotyped at first, but Dragon Water. Nah, bro. I see right through you on this one. But the latter was removed when the amount of water Pokemon was deemed too much and more balance was needed. You're the same dude who said there are too many grass types. I'm gonna say right here, I got a gut instinct that Goomy was always meant to be pure dragon. Its design was also made a bit more solid. Originally, it was a bit more watery and slightly transparent. Yeah, like it already is watery and gooey. Guys, it was a water type. Let's keep going. The idea of Pokemon being multiple sizes and affecting their stats, as seen with the Pumpkaboo line, is an idea that the team had played around with for years, but have never included due to the gameplay changes it caused. Well. We did get this later with Alpha Pokemon and all in Legends Arceus. They're very different sized Pokemon. Due to the use of 3D models now allowing sizes to be more properly conveyed as compared to sprites, they decided to implement it among a new line of Pokemon. Alright, this is believable, but this one is friggin' obvious. Why else do you think they made Gourgeist? I don't need to hear it from you that they wanted to make differently sized Pokemon. Bro, this is something that was always gonna happen in Pokemon. Honestly, we're done, but I want to skip down a bit because I saw the word Diancie pop up. Let's read this. There's only enough for one more video, by the way. In early stages of development, Diancie was intended to be an actual evolution of Carbink. Well, why don't you just use every layup in the book in your post? But this was changed as Diancie's design was altered a bit more and was promoted to an event legendary. What are you saying here? Yeah, evolutions look different than the previous. Diancie legit looked like you give Carbink the Princess Crown, held item, level it up, and it turns into Diancie. This was done around the same time it was decided Zygarde to be an in-game Pokemon and a new event legendary was needed to fill in the gap. This is so stupid. You know why? Because I make fun of it, but then I let it get in my head and let it sizzle for a moment, and it makes sense, right? Think. They already had the idea of Carbink and Diancie being an evolution line, and it's because they scrapped it that lore still exists. The Diancie mutates from her Carbink and is instead this mythical Pokemon. You can play this game back and forth, man. Chicken and egg. Right now we have a mythical image of Diancie. We consider it a legendary Pokemon, so it's hard to wrap your head around. But if you just imagine that you only found Carbinks in the wild, and if you took Carbink to that spot where the Alakazite is in X and Y, where all the shiny crap is, and it had a certain held item, that you could actually evolve it into a Diancie. And instead of 600 BST, it'd be like a 550 BST Pokemon, just a bit above Carbink. And of course, with that elegant design, which they knew was a good design, it would be a fan favorite Pokemon and deserving of that 550 BST. It does sound like this idea was stripped and Diancie was kicked out, and then they decided to make it a mythical Pokemon instead. And that's why you got this weird case of a mutation in Pokemon. So, my dudes, I've ultimately understood whether this is a hoax or not, and this answer will surprise you. It's interesting. We only have enough for one more video, so next time we do this, we done. We going through everything. Do you believe parts of this post? Now remember, it's not the whole post in general that you say yes or no to, but these little points in between, because believing a story, he's interviewing Gamefreak employees and getting the untold story of things they wanted to implement and all. So you take each individual point at face value and see whether you believe it or not. Because even if this is true, there would be probably some lies mixed up in it, just because that's what they always do. So do you believe some of the stuff we talked about in this video? Shank that like button. It's very interesting how easily something can get in your head. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.